What is up? It is Dave. It's Duncan. Back
Zai.
from Metal Epidemic for another album review. For this review, Duncan and I have been checking out the new album from Pittsburgh riff slingers 156, Silence. The band's new album.
Should it be that way or should it be 156?
That'd be cool.
I take it we don't include the what, that'll be a forward slash?
156/silence.
I don't know.
Nah,
I'll be honest, the name confused the fuck out of me. So
Okay.
at first when you sent it through to me, I was like that. Why are we doing a split? and then I realised that they had more albums out, and I was like, either this band just does nothing but split albums, or this is actually their name.
Yes.
So
the band's new album, People Watching, will be released on September 13th. Duncan's favourite hobby, via Sharptone Records. 156 Silence sounds ravenous, ominous, and haunting. Their songs are literary and cinematic, cerebral and brutal, drawing from real and imagined horrors, all intertwined with melody and might. Less than a decade after their emergence, 156 Silence are back with their incendiary fourth album, People Watching. We pushed ourselves to get out of our comfort zone and explore new things, says vocalist Jack Murray, who writes lyrics and vocals over music penned primarily by guitarist Jimmy Howell. We have differing feelings about different records, Howell says of himself. Murray, guitarist Ryan Wilkinson, bassist Lucas Booker, and drummer Kyle O'Connell. But we can all agree that People Watching is our best album yet. You could ask anybody in the band and nobody would disagree. Murray's lyrics remain keenly observational, personal and incisive. He approaches each song with the same intensity and raw nerve that propelled earlier anthems like Conflict of Interest, High Dive in a Low Well, and I Am a Fault. That authenticity is crucial to the band's ever-growing audience. No two 156 Silence albums are alike. There's a lot of numbers together there. For the unhinged frenetic chaos of Undercover Scumbag in 2018, to the gloriously savage and technical Irrational Pull from 2020, which Metal Hammer likened to Converge and Botch. The diverse ruminations found in Narrative in 2022 took things even further. Brooklyn Vegan called the album bolder and richer, and an exciting step forward for the band. People Watching continues the prolific outfit's tradition of steadfast evolution and innovation. Produced by Jonathan Dolles, who has worked with Amur and Attack. People Watchers ushers in a new era for the band. I look towards bands we love that grew with their listeners. Bands like Thrice, Glassjaw and Deftones, Howell says, of their continuing creative mission. They have a sound, but they grow and change. Some bands are comfortable repeating a great band's sound. I don't want to do that. I want to make you feel the way you do when you hear one of those bands without sounding like them. So, Duncan, we reviewed Irrational Pull back in 2020, Duncan. Woo.
did we?
We did.
Was that there?
You were. That was when we were...
Check the album cover.
We were 3-0 it up back then in 2020. We did the Irrational Pull Deluxe version, I think.
Yes.
Yes.
And
I understand why you don't remember that, because you didn't like the album as much as I did.
Right. That's probably why I'm not listening to it. And we didn't do Narrative.
We didn't. Someone else on the site reviewed Narrative.
Interesting.
Which that one kind of saw them like explore the sound a little bit more. Still like a lot of kind of like venom in their delivery, but definitely more experimental than Irrational Pull, which was predominantly a kind of metallic hardcore album. I liked Narrative. I thought they added some interesting elements, more kind of like brooding melody and a bit more space, a little bit of touch of nu metal in there as well. Overall, I still preferred Irrational Pull. I don't know, there was something just kind of in the simplicity of that album that just kind of caught me right. But I was interested to hear what they would do next. I love the fact that they're not happy just to churn out the same album over and over again. So I was intrigued with this one. 14 tracks long, runtime's about 46.5 minutes, which is not much longer than Narrative, about 3 minutes longer than Narrative. Before we get into the album though, Kind of digging that artwork, not going to lie.
The artwork's absolutely awesome.
Yeah, like the previous album was, the imagery is, a bit busier usually. This one's quite simplified, a wee bit kind of sinister. There's something about those teeth that make me feel a little bit uneasy. I'm not going to lie.
If famous internet YouTube haunting, disturbing character Salad Fingers was a man, that's what he'd look like. So,
but yeah, digging it. What do we think about people watching? Actually, I'm interested in what you thought of this, because
I can't even remember the previous.
Right, okay. Well, what did you think of?
What did I
one?
dislike about the previous one?
Because
I'll be honest, I'm kind of high on this, so right. Either my tastes of 180, it caught me in a bad week, maybe on my period, I don't know, or
interesting.
Or they've changed elements here that to me make them a bit more robust.
There's a lot changed here, yeah.
Right, well,
for sure.
Well, that may be why I like this a bit more.
Okay, interesting.
So, a couple of things I'll get out of the way at the start. I thought after the first two songs, I was going to pass through this album with a sense of malaise and disinterest, right?
Okay.
Because the start of this album is big, kind of chuggy metalcore, kind of a slight tinge of the kind of 2000s. There's a little bit of Chimera in there.
Sure.
Not the widdly Chimera, more the kind of groovy stuff. But it's stuff I've heard done a million times. And I kind of I didn't say I almost checked out, but I did kind of feel like the glaze start to come across my eyes. Is that because that's how the album starts?
Yeah.
And then they hit you with Sleep Spikes, which is essentially it's like an interlude, but it's like a really cool interlude. It's kind of weirdly disconcerting, atmospheric track that builds into Better Written Villain. And this is, to me, is where the album just lit up straight away. And actually, on the second listen through, the opening two songs are genius because they front load a ton of just hostile aggression and power, and then transition through the interlude track to a track that is hugely swathed in melody. But it's not a happy melody.
No.
A lot of metalcore is a bit saccharine, let's be honest. You know what I mean? Like don't be diabetic and get around like modern metalcore, or you will go into an insulin coma. This doesn't have that. It has that kind of haunting. It's interesting you mentioned Deftones. It has that kind of haunting Deftonesy sort of weird, kind of shoegazy, dreamy melody that kicks over. And this track was the first one to me where, one, that melody comes in and is used in force, but two, you get the addition of a lot of stuff in the background elevating up, whether that is, I presume, synth sounds, but also some of the guitar effects as well. It's still a track that kind of is heavily predicated on the kind of chuggy, like tight bass drum guitar synchronicity riff. But those sections where it breaks open and bursts you're hit with like some really weird dominance and melody. And I kind of thought, does this have a guest vocalist? Because I was aware when I transferred it over, there's a couple of guests on this. So I was like, maybe this is just the guest vocalist doing the melody, which would have knocked it down even further because I hate bands that do that. If you can't do it live, don't fucking do it. And I was wrong. The album actually was surprisingly on the melody side, pretty much from track 4 onwards. Product placement is a great example of that, where it's right at the start and it's huge and it's sweepy and it's sorry. It reminded me a little bit of hopefully one day future Sharptone Records signing Grayscale Season. Just going to keep saying that until they sign them.
Nice.
Just going to keep saying it until they sign them, Dave.
Yep.
I'm just saying, if you are from Sharptone Records, there's a little band called Grayscale Season out there, one of the best albums of the year, and it kind of sounds like it would fit your record label. Also, if 156 Silence want to tour with the band, Grayscale Season would be a great fit. Just putting that out there. So yeah, it was a track that was more front-loaded with it. You get a bit of... They're a weird band to kind of compartmentalise, in that you do get a swath of sounds that weirdly, and I'm usually against, press statements as trying to force me to think a particular way. That's why I don't read them. But at least 3 or 4 of the bands you've mentioned there, I can cherry pick in their sound, like segments or at least influence. Like when product placement comes in, it's very Thrice.
Oh yeah.
And it kind of caught me on the back foot because I, once again, wasn't expecting that. It's a pivot shift. But the pivot shift comes after Sleep Spikes, which, like I've said before, kind of feels like a reset. So you get the 2 really chunky songs, and then you get this reset, and then you get tracks where the band are really pushing a kind of stronger presence of melody. The aggression's still there in the riffing. The kind of lead screamy vocals, which we are going to talk about in a minute, are there as well. They sound cool as fuck. But then we continue into Blood Loss, has a guest appearance by Carson Page, who is a name that I recognise but I could not place.
I should know this as well.
From some, like, he's like, it's a name you don't forget, but Dave will do some research. And it's another one where kind of, once again, kind of resets the sound.
Oh, it's the Dowboys, Callous Dowboys.
There we go. See, I knew there's something on the, like, right there, as in, like, I'd heard it recently. And it's predominantly synth driven, which once again is a little bit strange, but cool. It shows their use of atmospherics. It shows their use of specifically sound layering, and the melodies are really fucking cool. It finishes heavy as fuck, right? Very kind of ending, but the track is paid off so much of that melody at the beginning that when you reach the back end, it kind of does have a weirdly, now that we mention it, a kind of Callous Boys ending. And it's cool. And I liked it as well, so it was opening the sound up. Once I Need has Craig Owens, who, well, let's not even guess on that one. Once again, I feel like I should know the name. The tracks flow in though, so Blood Loss into What I Need kind of is a track that almost flows right into, and this one builds up with, this one has got like late 90s, early 2000s tearing out it with the kind of clean guitar sound that's picking over the back, all the chun sort of stuff. It's cool, I really liked it. You then go into Funeral Arrangements, which kind of slows the album down, but it kind of does the job of what one of those instrumental tracks I've done in the past, and that it opens with about 30 seconds of kind of weird ominosity. That which isn't a word, but let's use it. And it goes into a much more, like, almost like the front 2 tracks, just something really, really, really fucking nasty, really pissed off, really, really chuggy, and just, like, brutal. Like, just, it's a track that goes for the jugular. And then you get, I don't want to go track by track, but you go into Unreasonable Doubt, which kind of continues that on. It's the one that has a bit of the chimera about it. Some of the guitar, especially at the beginning, the guitar effects kind of remind me a little bit of that. A little bit of, I'm trying to remember what the first album was. First Chimera album on Roadrunner was
Possibility of Reason? Before that?
Yeah. No, that was the second album. Can't remember what the first one was. The one that had Split on it and stuff.
Pass Out of Existence.
Passed Out of Existence, right. Like, Unreasonable Doubt has a passed out of existence feel about it. Kind of love it because once again, it had, like, it's front loaded with the aggressive melody. Well, it's not even aggressive melody, just the aggressive vocals, but there's something more tonal about how it's delivered. It's really fucking cool. People watching, like, caught me for a loop, because People Watching is obviously the title track, self-titled. So you think to yourself, right, this is where the peacock, it's your self-titled song, this is your sound. And it's relatively short.
Yeah.
And it's the one that just seems to be maybe the band that they're most playful. And I don't mean like funny playful, as in there's a conscious choice to make this really unsettling and disconcerting, which kind of goes with the term People Watching. The back part of the album is like the back quarter, maybe a little bit inconsistent in the way they've structured it. So you go from Change Agent, which has Trey Roberts as a guest. Always get wary when there's lots of guest appearances on an album, but we're going to come to that. Intravenous, which is the interlude song. And then I would say a pretty cool 1-2 punch at the end with Terms and Conditions and Healing Process, in brackets, Leave of Absence. I think this is very well produced. It has like a nice, fresh, modern. Has that Sharptone sound. If you know what I mean. It's kind of what Sharptone bands sound bright. All their mixes sound really bright. I love the guitar work on it. I think the use of layering is really well done. I think it manages to capture late 90s new metal, early 2000s metalcore, and that kind of weird screamo emo thing that happened just kind of in between the two.
Yeah.
But in an interesting way, modernise it and sound it a bit more kind of contemporary. The aggressive vocals, whilst they do sit in a range, I really fucking love the sound of it. He's got that kind of raspy scream that sounds like it's 2 seconds away from breaking, but never breaks. The melody is clean and on point. I mean, it does exactly what it needs to do. It sometimes shifts towards a bit more an ominous sound, and other times it goes for something a little bit more saccharine. The differentiator there is really what the synths are doing underneath. That's what kind of separates them. And like I say, just like really well executed. If I'm honest, I found the album a bit long, especially by third listen. I kind of felt like we could have maybe chopped out 2 songs and it wouldn't have damaged it detrimentally. I don't know what 2 songs I would chop out. And like I say, the beginning, which I wasn't necessarily sold on first time I listened to it, those 2 opening songs are actually quite a smart move, I think, in hindsight, because they do kind of make you think you're getting one thing before the album kind of resets expectations and then moves into a much more interesting middle section. I would say tracks 4 through to probably track 10, people watching, are where the band really get quite experimental and really, really interesting. But they bookend it with their sound, which kind of makes a little bit of sense. It's kind of like, you know, this is the stuff you expect from us. This is all the stuff we're trying that sounds like much more interesting. So from not being able to remember previous stuff from them, which I'm going to assume was because all this stuff wasn't on it, this actually slapped a lot more in line with kind of what I was wanting. There's enough unexpected twists and turns. The only thing I would say overall as a kind of last thing is it maybe lacks a little bit of cohesion in some of the twists. Some of the changes, some tracks sit side by side which are not comfortable bedfellows, but I had a good time listening to it. So yeah, I don't know what else to say. So I will pass it to you, who clearly were a fan, but they were then kind of a little bit disenfranchised, and now are trying to find something to bring you back. Did people watch and bring you back, Dave?
Yeah. So I don't think we're too far apart on this one. I'll admit, my first listen to this, I quite enjoyed it. Like, I wasn't really overthinking it. I just kind of had it on when I was working. So I wasn't really like scrutinising the album at all on the first kind of spin of it. On repeat listens, when I started to kind of hone in on certain things and start to kind of pay attention a bit more, I maybe started to find a few things that didn't completely work for me on this one. What I will say is, though, even though I expected some sort of switch up or a kind of change on this album, because we heard on the previous album on Narrative, they did start to explore new sounds. I don't think I was totally ready for how big this band were going to sound on this album.
Right.
This album sounds massive, like both musically and vocally. The difference between this and like Irrational Pull is like huge. They've really worked at adding a lot more kind of depth to their sound, and that comes from slightly pushing more kind of stylistic choices as a band. This is definitely not as like kind of blunt force trauma as Irrational Pull was, but it gives you so much more like across the kind of metal spectrum, I suppose, than that album did. 156 Silence are no longer just a metallic hardcore or a metalcore band. It still has parts of metalcore and hardcore, but they're now adding in moments of post-hardcore and new metal and the bits of electronica and almost kind of like touching on industrial at times as well. So on a musical front, I think this is the most varied thing they've done to date by far. Not only that, they've managed to kind of meld those styles in a very kind of cohesive way. I think that the blend here is really well kind of spread out on the album. I also think, like you said, the synths and electronics on here are playing a much more kind of key role in the 156 Silent sound. Did
they have them before?
Not really. They used them a little bit on the last album, but Irrational Pool didn't have much in that kind of realm at all. This time they're using them in very effective ways, just to either lift a certain part of a track, a chorus, or to shift the mood of a track. They almost get into like enter Shikari territory in that first track, like kind of techno stuff coming in. I was like, whoa. Or they'll use it as a kind of like a bridge from kind of one track to the next, like they do with kind of Sleep Spikes. So I thought the album had a decent flow to it, and I thought their song kind of placement was done in a way that kind of kept you interested in what was coming next. If you listen to the album, they never really start a track the same way twice, back to back. They're always slightly different the way they kind of kick things in. So you could always tell when a new track was kind of beginning on the album. Vocally, I think, is where the biggest involvement has been with this band. And you could hear on narrative, things were starting to kind of push out a little bit. Boundaries were starting to get pushed. But on People Watching, you're getting like the full kind of growth of that. And as such, Jack Murray is delivering like just this wide range of vocal styles and textures, including these huge, massive cleans on the album. When I heard Better Written Villain, I was like, is this the same guy? Or like, is this a guess? It's like, as you said, it's got that kind of like Chino, ethereal kind of quality in his voice. And it just opens the band's sound up even more. And then on product placement, we get this like kind of post-hardcore, like Thrice meets kind of Silverstein kind of crooning on that track, which is again totally different to Better Written Villain, but adds a nice hook and another distinctive element to the track. A lot of the cleans, kind of like you mentioned, are also quite moody. Like they do have that kind of like early 2000s kind of vibe to them. They use a lot of minor chords.
Yeah, I like that though. Like I say, I always get like there's always something. I blame Killswitch Engage. I think everyone should blame Killswitch Engage. We would be getting like music that was just the most angry and pissed off thing, and then 2 seconds later we're singing about love and like all the rest, and it was like such a code switch.
Yeah.
Like I go back and listen to some of that, and I'm like, this is fucking nonsense. Like 2 seconds ago you were about to burn the world down, now you want to give it a kiss. Which one is it?
Yeah.
So.
But like I thought they're really clever in the way that just because they've added cleans, it doesn't mean to say that they're going to be like upbeat and happy. A lot of the kind of clean work on here is quite kind of dark and melancholic. Terms and Conditions is like a perfect example of that. But even with the increase in like melody and clean vocals, they still bring the heaviness and the weight when like a track needs it. And some of the riffs on this are huge. That opening track had little kind of like knocked loose type kind of inflections. You've got like a big kind of metalcore groove on Better Written Villain, and then they get quite discordant towards the end of Target Acquired, or on Change Agent, where they lean into a little bit more of a progressive side, and the riffs are a bit more kind of bendy in their kind of approach. But I don't know about you, but on I can't remember what track it was now, there was a track that had a little bit of that like kind of post-industrial kind of Doodseskader kind of vibe throughout it. I think it was Blood Loss, if I remember right. Had it in the drums, and there was like a kind of spoken word kind of style build-up on the track.
It's the one where they did from Callista Boys.
Right.
And the whole first half of that song is all like kind of weird, like weird synths and weird guitar tones and kind of almost electronic drums, and then the back half of it is just savage.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I thought it was a really clever placement, because it's kind of almost kind of middle of the album, and you're creating that kind of bit of space and breathing room before they kick into Once I Need. But I was happy to hear they didn't completely like abandon those elements either. After Blood Loss, you get some more of that on the title track as well, which was pretty cool. I thought there was a lot of good things on this album. Most definitely sounds like the kind of broadest 156 Silence sound we've heard, in terms of style and kind of nuance. And I thought all the elements were very well executed. This is really tight and really kind of precise sounding.
Yeah, there's no space.
A couple of things that maybe didn't totally work for me.
Here comes the butt, ladies and gents.
As the album went on, I did feel like some of the some of the kind of compositional choices they use on the tracks started to become a little bit obvious for me. And I could kind of predict what was going to come next. And even though like that they're clearly trying new things to expand their sound, they weren't necessarily ideas that I hadn't heard done before in the past. I don't think that would have been so much of a problem, but the other issue I had, and you've already mentioned it, is I think this album's maybe 2 or 3 tracks too long. And because of that length, it does start to, for me, it got a little bit repetitive towards the end.
I think it's that whole middle bit is so varied that when it goes back to being kind of conventional towards the end, it feels really conventional. And it kind of almost feels like, I know why you're doing it. I know your fans are going to expect that sound, but at the same time, you've just given me. It's like going out for a beautiful meal, Dave. Right? And you sit down, and the starter is just as one of the best things you've ever tried, and then the main comes and it blows your mind.
Yes.
And then you sit down to dessert, and the option is vanilla ice cream. You know what I mean? The album builds in such a way where you really are kind of kept on your toes, wondering what's coming next. When that core sound comes back in, it feels a bit plain against everything else.
Yep, it does. So yeah, it was. I really liked People Watching as a track. I felt like they could have probably like closed the album on that one.
It's really cool.
I thought it was really good. And the cleans are really good. Like I think the addition of the clean vocals is a great idea from the band. But again, similar to the kind of the music on the album, as it got towards the end, I felt like it was starting to become like a kind of familiar formula. In that kind of last chunk of the album. Lastly, obviously this is the biggest production the band have had on an album to date.
Hell huge.
And it works for the direction of the band, with more melody, more cleans, electronics and synths, and there's little samples as well. It sounds great. And as you said as well, it kind of works with the Sharptone sound, Sharptone Records kind of sound. My only thing was I kind of missed the kind of rawness of that old material. Like I like an album that sounds quite gnarly and gritty sounding, and this is a total personal preference. There's nothing wrong with this production at all, but for my kind of personal preferences, I liked that tone they had on Irrational Pull. There was just something really kind of dirty about it. This still sounds heavy as fuck. The production has size and thickness. I wouldn't say there was anything overly distinctive about it, if you know what I mean. It's a very metalcore kind of type production. It's very clean and polished sounding, so maybe just for me it didn't kind of grab me the same way that Irrational Pull did. So lots of good ideas. There's a big chunk of this album that's been really well executed. I love the fact they don't like keep the same sound on every album, and this is by far the biggest and most varied thing they've done. Doesn't automatically make it the best. I think I still prefer Irrational Pull, if I'm honest. There was just something in the kind of unhinged, kind of raw intensity of that album that just worked for me. This one definitely has the variation and the big production. Maybe not as much character as that old album had. So score-wise, what you thinking for this new one from 156 Silence? What you scoring? People Watching?
I'd give this a 4. Like I say, I think it makes a couple of missteps stylistically for me overall, and I think the middle part of the album is selfishly where I would love to see them go more into, and maybe start to phase out some of that more tried and tested kind of metalcore, metallic hardcore, however you want to describe it, sound that is in there. And do more with mood atmosphere, certainly more with synths. I think I hadn't even clocked the idea that Blood Lost does sit very interestingly near the Doodseskader synth, which I do like. Well, see my mid-year list, fucking love. But more of that stuff, I think they have a grasp on how to handle that, and it's not easy to handle that. So it's a little bit too long for me. But yeah, 4 seems fair.
Yeah. I'm not far away. 3.5 for me. Still a very enjoyable album. As I said, like when the first run of this album I gave it, I actually really enjoyed it. It was only after that, the repeat listens, when I kind of started to kind of go into a little bit more in detail. There was a few things that I didn't totally enjoy. But yeah, Still excited to hear what they do next, because every album sounds different. And I imagine the next one again will take another involvement in another direction. So definitely looking forward to hearing what they do next. So that is 156 Silence, the brand new album People Watching, out on September 13th on Sharptone Records. Links below the band to the pre-order. Check out, have a listen, see what you think. That's the review. Thanks for checking out. We'll be back with another review very soon. But until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.
This is the way you love it. Why love? Yeah.